So I am on set for the Cannabis Project, and this project is long overdue, oh my god, but finally it's done, it's here. And so I just want to give you guys a quick rundown of all of the components in this project, help you guys navigate through it. For those of you who want to learn about cannabis, of course. Okay, so essentially it has 3 parts. A main video where I will be talking about the spiritual effects of cannabis and its underlying mechanisms, and like a brief introduction to the endocannabinoid system and etc. And then it will have 2 written parts. Part 1 of the written parts is going to be emphasized on the endocannabinoid system and like brain regions and just like more objective literature review summaries. And the second part is going to be the synthesis of everything I wrote in part 1. And the second part will be like the spiritual effects of cannabis. And I also talked about cannabis addiction, or the risk of developing cannabis addiction and the risk of developing cannabis-induced psychosis and its underlying mechanism. So for those of you who want to casually learn about the spiritual effects of cannabis and the underlying mechanisms, you can just watch my video. Whereas if you want to look at the justifications or like the research that is supporting my arguments, you can check out my blogs. Yeah. So yes, and I will link everything in the description box down below and in every part of the Cannabis Project, and I hope you enjoy. Yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time and energy on this project and can't wait for it to be done so I can move on to another project. Yeah, okay. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Bye. Yeah, hi friends. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, so in this video, let's talk about cannabis. Essentially, cannabis interacts with the human body through the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system essentially is just a conceptual grouping of the endocannabinoid receptors, which are essentially just the binding sites for endocannabinoids, which are essentially signaling molecules that are produced by neurons to communicate with each other. And what's special about endocannabinoids compared to other signaling molecules or neurotransmitters is that they're produced on demand. And the second thing that's special about them is that they travel backwards to inhibit neurotransmitter release from the presynaptic neurons. And CB1R and CB2R are 2 most well-studied and most abundant cannabinoid receptors in the human body. CB1R is the main cannabinoid receptors in the central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord. Whereas CB2R is the main cannabinoid receptors of the peripheral nervous systems, which is essentially the nerve terminals extending outwards from the brain and spinal cord. Yes, so CB1R is found on both inhibitory and excitatory synapses, meaning the activation of CB1R can result in either inhibition of inhibitory neurotransmission, meaning it will lead to an overall more excited brain region or synapses, or it can inhibit excitatory neurotransmitter release and lead to a more inhibited brain region or like synapses. So yeah, so it can essentially modulate synaptic transmission both ways, more excited or more inhibited. And the third component of the endocannabinoid system is essentially the metabolism enzymes of the endocannabinoids. Yeah. And if you want to read more or learn more about the endocannabinoid system, you're welcome to check out my blog, which I have a written description of a lot of things. Yeah. But now let's move on to the important part, which is the spiritual effects of cannabis and the underlying mechanisms of these spiritual effects. So the first spiritual effect of cannabis is that it pushes you to reevaluate life and your current life obligations. And how it does that is through binding or activating the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Because according to brain imaging, the brain region that has the most abundantly expressed CB1R is Brodmann area 46. And Brodmann area 46 is located in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This region is known for a few functions. The first one is that it acts like as an executive control modulator of working memory content. So it determines the relevance of what's in your conscious awareness. And then it directs your attention towards the most relevant working memory content, meaning like the things that you're noticing in the external environment. And yeah, by enhancing the neural representations of this content in relevant brain regions and etc. And stimulation of this brain region is found to enhance working memory monitoring. And so you can observe for yourself next time when you ingest cannabis. Usually your attention will be shifted towards stimulus that are more relevant in terms of making you question the nature of reality and your life obligations, like we said before, or behavioral patterns that need your attention for you to heal and to become a better person spiritually. Yes. So that's the first spiritual effect of cannabis, re-evaluation of life. And the second spiritual effect is that it helps you connect with your internal intuitive system by actually tuning up your internal sensations, including from the gut and from the heart. And of course, once you're connected with these sensations, then you don't need weed or cannabis to feel them anymore because you'll be aware of them. And the more you're aware of them, the more you pay attention to them, the stronger this connection between you and your internal intuitive system is. And so yeah, and how it does that is through the solitary nucleus, because CB1R is also very abundantly expressed in the solitary nucleus. And this part of the brain, which is located in the brainstem, and this part of the brain region is the processing center for incoming sensory information. Yes, because all afferent sensory nerves, meaning incoming sensory nerves, have to pass through this center to transmit signals to the brain from your skin or like peripheral nerves, like sensory neurons in the peripheral part of the body, meaning like side of the body. Yes, and the vagus nerve, as many of you may have known already, is like a major nerve that communicates or transmits communication between the gut and the brain. And the gut is essentially like a very important intuitive center in your body, right? And also the vagus nerve, or the solitary nucleus, is also like a processing center for the cardiovascular system. And your heart obviously is very important part of your intuition. Yeah, so that's how cannabis can help you connect to it. Because like we said before, the endocannabinoid system, the main function of it is to modulate or change synaptic transmission between neurons. And this change or modulation can be both ways. Can either be more excited or more inhibited, like the overall end outcome. And so if under cannabis, actually intoxication, because CB1R CB1R is mainly located on GABAergic, meaning inhibitory interneurons at the solitary nucleus. Once activated, this brain region will become more activated, and so you will become more aware of your internal sensations. And essentially you just feel more, and it makes you like internally, emotionally, you feel more. That's the second spiritual effect of cannabis. The third spiritual effect of cannabis is that it helps you heal emotionally. So how it helps you heal emotionally is first through stimulating the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, because this part of the brain region is also known for modulating or regulating emotional reappraisal. And emotional reappraisal basically just means that you are extracting positive learnings from negative life events and redefining the meaning of it. And that is literally the core of spiritual healing, like trying to always extract spiritual teachings from like negative life events. Yeah, and that's like the first aspect of emotional healing. The second aspect of emotional healing is that is through CB1Rs that are located in the basolateral amygdala, or BLA. When activated, BLA CB1Rs are found to make one more aware of, usually not aware or sub-threshold, subliminal, emotionally arousing stimulus. And this emotionally arousing stimulus can be either a positive emotionally arousing thing like a sub-threshold opiate, dose of opiate, or a negative stimulus like a very light sub-threshold food shock for mice. So essentially you notice them more by having a stronger emotional reaction in your body. So essentially, when under cannabis intoxication, your body becomes like a super sensor, and you become super sensitive to like a bunch of stuff, a bunch of sensory information. And how cannabis does that is through stimulating the ECS, which has the capacity to enhance neurotransmission. And by being more aware of normally sub-threshold triggers, like emotional triggers, you can then investigate and ask yourself why these triggers are affecting you, because normally they will be like subconscious. Like, so essentially it provides a pathway into your subconscious mind. And yeah, if you choose to investigate why these events are emotionally arousing you and choose to heal, and the definition of healing, emotional healing, is either when this same event or similar event no longer triggers an emotional reaction from you, or you can react better next time. Like, you get to decide your emotional reaction towards this emotionally arousing stimuli, right? So yeah, let's move on to the final and the fourth spiritual effect of cannabis, which is it helps you, it aids you in self-actualization. And how it does that is through stimulating the CB1Rs in the hippocampus. So essentially, imagination requires using past memory details and recombining them in a way that's like generating future possibilities. And cannabis, because it activates CB1Rs in the hippocampus, it makes the hippocampus more excited, and more pyramidal neurons in the hippocampus will become activated. And these pyramidal neurons, or PNs, in the hippocampus essentially act as like a storage unit for past memory contents or details. And more activated neurons means more you get to access more of these details, and so you get to combine them in more ways. And so that's why it, like, a very common effect of cannabis intoxication is enhanced imagination, and you kind of like will be able to visualize more possibilities for yourself. And combine this enhanced imagination combined with dorsolateral prefrontal cortex activation, which is also responsible for top-down generation of affective states, or top-down generation of emotional states, like using your mind to generate feeling, essentially, which is like a very big part in visualization or manifestation, because you have to be able to feel into how you would feel once a specific future becomes your reality, and then decide whether you want that reality or not. So essentially, yeah, cannabis helps you generate more future possibilities, and then enhances your feeling states, and so you can get to decide what you want to do, and etc., etc. Yeah, that's essentially the spiritual effects of cannabis, and I explain them in more details in written forms in my blog. If you guys are interested, check them out. They're in the description box. Yeah.
Okay, so one profound and robust side effect of cannabis use is the downregulation of the endocannabinoid system. Specifically, CB1R expression level is found to be down 10 to 20% consistently in heavy cannabis users, meaning that heavy cannabis users would have a lower level or fewer CB1Rs across all brain regions. And depending on the specific brain region, this CB1R downregulation would result in different behavioral effects or outcome. The reason why your ECS would get downregulated after you consistently or like consecutively smoke weed is because the ECS system itself is like very important in the body. Like it regulates so many physiological processes, and so it's like really important. And so like it's very sensitive to exogenous agents, and even like a little bit of weed is going to affect it. And plus it's like a very dynamic system. So yeah. Anyways, let's talk about side effects. So if CB1R downregulation happens in the hippocampus, then you would have memory problems, and the reason for this memory problem is because CB1R activation is required to consolidate your episodic memory contents into long-term memories. And so if you don't have enough CB1R, or you don't have like sufficient amount of CB1R in your brain, this consolidation process is going to get disturbed, and that's why people find it hard to remember things like after persistent cannabis use. Okay, and if it happens in the amygdala, study found that CB1R knockout mice actually exhibit more like anxiety-like behaviors, like disrupted night sleep, and agitated psychomotor behaviors. Like you get more nervous in new environments, and like I guess like social interactions, because you don't have that effective of a emotional regulatory system anymore. Essentially, CB1R downregulation is the biggest, I would say, side effect of cannabis use. And this side effect is like a guaranteed result from consecutive cannabis use, because like I said before, the ECS is a very important biological system, and it's very sensitive to exogenous agent, and it's highly dynamic. So yeah, like just know that smoking weed a lot is not without its cost, okay? And this cost is like very important, like critical, important, or yeah, profound, but in a negative way. But like the good news is that the CB1R downregulation is found to be reversible, and this time course of this reversal spans across 2 to 30 days depending on the individual. So essentially after 2 to 30 days, the CB1R level will come back to normal level, but you have to be able to not smoke weed and not or ingest cannabis in this time span for your entire state of being to be back to normal and to the optimal state, I guess. Yeah. And that's why smoking weed, or like weed itself, it can be a very vicious cycle, because when you consecutively do it, you just get into this like sub intoxication state, and like when you don't smoke it, you just feel sluggish and like suboptimal, and so you want to boost up your ECS, and then you would just end up smoking more, and then you just constantly in the cycle, so it's not good. But yeah, a helpful tip that I find helpful is to eat more brain food, and like just maintain your brain health in general, like sleep well, stay hydrated, drink a lot of water, eat like walnuts and like food that's rich in ALA to boost up your ECS tone intentionally, and engage in cognitive tasks. That's what I do too, and I feel it works. Yeah, so essentially force your brain to produce more CB1Rs, I guess. Hi friends. Hey. So let's talk about how to overcome cannabis addiction one last time, because I have finally overcame it, and so I feel like now is the best time for me to conclude how to overcome cannabis addiction. Yes. So essentially, I'm gonna share with you guys the realizations that helped me finally gain back control in my life and develop a sense of strong self-control and discipline. Yes. Okay, so because essentially everybody has their own set of pleasurable activities, right? And it is only when the balance becomes this imbalanced that one develops an addiction. And when you develop an addiction, chances are it's really hard to succeed in anything you embark on, because it's going to significantly affect your self-worth and self-confidence. And also, when you don't have good self-control and discipline, it will like translate into other areas of your life, like not just cannabis addiction, not just like one addiction. And so if you want to live a fulfilling and happy life, then you have to overcome your addiction, whatever that is. Yes. And so how do we find back control? Essentially, for me, it's realizing that if I don't gain this skill, like we discussed just now, there's no, like, I can't follow through with my plans because I don't have the self-control and discipline, and I don't feel confident in expressing myself because I don't feel worthy, because me, like, basically knowingly choosing to hurt my body or hurt my life, like knowingly doing that really damages my self-worth, So yeah, cannabis essentially, it can induce a sense of euphoria, and the specific mechanisms I mentioned in my blog, but I'll briefly mention here. Essentially, it's through either stimulating your ventral hippocampus or like your emotional memory center, that it gives you like a hit of like dopamine, like motivation or reward kind of feeling from like either your past memories, some past happy memories of yours, or some generated future possibilities, because imagination also depends on your episodic memory details or like memory contents like from the past. So essentially imagination, like, it requires using past memory details to generate future images, essentially. Yes, so it's either through stimulating that it gives you like a hit of dopamine, or in general, THC activating CB1R can inhibit the inhibitory neurons that are innervating or like touching midbrain dopamine neurons, and making them more excited, and thus more dopamine release, making you feel happier and like elated and euphoric when under the influence. However, this state is artificial, like how I see it. It's like an artificially generated happy state, and you're not actually exploring outwards in life and, feeling life and exploring life and gaining more new life experiences. But instead, you're just generating artificial states in your head, in your mind, and that's not gonna give you happiness in the long term, like afterwards. And especially if you're doing it from like an addictive place, then it's gonna tap into your dopamine system and neurologically consolidate your cravings. And when these cravings like are too satisfied, like too much, then addiction becomes less about the reward but more so about avoiding the pain and motivational or emotional pain, so like the only way to get out of the state is to stop using it and find joy in other activities, and to willingly engage yourself in hard work and effort, and to like actually truly earn reward, so yeah. Yes, and that's how I did it. And also, addiction from a spiritual standpoint in general can be seen as a fatherly wound, because it means that you're detached from this divine masculine or empowered masculine energy, because likely, like, I don't know, like you don't have like a good role model in your life to like look towards and be like, oh shit, like this person can do it, so like I should probably do it, maybe. But if that's the case, tap into the energy of God. And if you'd be like, I don't know who the fuck God is, or like I don't believe in Christianity, then for me, a good way is to like imagine Zeus, but minus the like effing around part, like just generate an image of a divine masculine, empowered masculine image, energy in your head, in your life, and then refather yourself or something, like, because if you want to achieve in life and live a happy and fulfilling life, you have to have self-control and discipline. That's just period, yeah. Okay. And yeah, hopefully you guys or everybody can all get out of like the addictive cycle, because I know it's like really makes people not happy. Yeah. And we will. I did. So yeah. Okay, and now let's talk about the second risk of cannabis use, which is cannabis-induced psychosis. And we're gonna talk about how it feels like, and like the potential underlying mechanisms, because right now scientists have not figured it out yet. So like there's no like definite answer to why, but like I came up with like a few underlying mechanisms and hypotheses. But yeah, I'm gonna share that with you guys, and also how to overcome that. Yes, and like how to see it, I guess. So essentially, how it feels like is, for me at least, it feels like I can see too many future possibilities and too many ways of things potentially happening, and to a point where I don't know which reality I'm living in right now, like which timeline I'm on, essentially, you know, like, yeah. And then feel very stressed and overwhelmed, and then don't know how to move forward, and like just go into like a freeze response, kind of. That's like my experience, and then it makes you like really frustrated and anxious, and then you don't know like what the fuck kind of life you're living in, kind of. Yeah. Okay, and so the mechanisms underlying that is so like it's through one or more of these mechanisms. It's like, yeah, mentioned in my blog, so it's like in written forms if you guys want to look at it. But the first potential mechanism is through overexciting your hippocampal CB1R, which leads to overforming or excessive forming of incidental associations, or in colloquial terms, sign reading, or like reading into signs and synchronicities, to a point where you you basically see a lot of signs, but you don't know what it means, and you fail to engage in reality testing, to a point where imagination and reality, like the line between it, becomes blurry. Yeah. But however, like imagination can become your reality if you're willing to make it happen. That's how, like, as seen with innovations and inventions, you know? Yeah. And also, like, from overusing cannabis, you can have a less effective emotional regulatory system. And so when overly reading signs making you anxious, like that part happens, your brain goes quicker into like a anxious like response mode and stress response mode. And so yeah, and so like you just get anxious and stressed essentially, and that underlies the emotional aspect of in cannabis induced psychosis. Yeah. Okay. And then the hallucination part of the cannabis induced psychosis can potentially be attributed to cannabis users showing hyperpriming of semantic stimuli. So essentially, priming essentially means using a stimulus, and then when you see a related stimulus that you associated as being related, it's gonna trigger the activation of this neural representation of this related content faster, because you already like primed your brain previously. Essentially, the brain has that function, you know, like, yeah, like seeing one thing and then it just activates related concepts, you know? Yeah. And so cannabis users show hyperpriming, meaning this related concept activation becomes faster and broader. Like, so you activate more related concepts and potentially like stronger activation and stuff. And so how do you get out of this state? First of all, like if you can recognize that it is a state and recognize that whatever you want you can bring to life, and then just see through the illusion of this, then you don't have any psychotic symptoms anymore. You know, you just, yeah, gotta regulate yourself emotionally better. And now, as a person who has gone through this trip of this love-hate intense relationship with cannabis, I feel like I'm in a position that are qualified to give advice to people who are using cannabis or are considering using cannabis. My recommended way of approaching it. So first, never use it from a place of cravings and never develop an addiction to it because it's just so annoying, frustrating. Yeah. So essentially never allow yourself to use it consecutively every day, blah blah blah. And I really think it should be either a round trip, or if you really want to use it because you like it, like me. I like kind of walking on edge. I don't know. Anyway, so it's either a round trip or you use it specifically for spiritual reasons to prevent CB1R downregulation. But if you choose to use it, then know what the effect is. Yeah. But it affects your quality of life, okay? Like it decreases it hella. So, yes. And the second tip that I'm going to mention in this video is essentially please don't use it during adolescence, because during adolescence your brain's at your prime, and essentially don't use it during adolescence. Period. That's all for the cannabis video. It's a big ass conclusion, and for me it's like a new chapter in life. It's kind of crazy. Okay, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Peace out. Okay. Bye. Love you guys. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay. Bye. See you guys in the next video. Bye.